second while we do the opening.
Okay.
You got it, homie. Because it's our 50th. It's our 50th thing, and I'm not there. And I want you to be like, "There's Jess." I just sent it to you.
You sent it to me via text. Okay, hold on. All right, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
I can do this. I can pull this off. This is totally cute. Possible. Okay, hold on.
I know. I believe in you, friend.
All right, so now I have to make sure like it shows up. There we go.
Well, kind of. No, over in front of your face.
In front of my face?
In front of your face.
You want me? You want you to block my face?
Well, no, just for 1 second.
Oh, okay.
When you're okay. So people can be like, "There she is." Okay,
right,
that's
so maybe
recording.
This is producer Ben needs to know when it's going to start. It's going to be when hold on. Here we go.
Yeah. You just be like, yeah, okay.
It won't make any sense to our listeners. It just makes sense to the video people, all whoever that is. Oh my goodness!
Yeah, cute.
All right, we need an official start. Something to trigger this conversation.
Okay,
Jess,
you do it.
I'm introducing Royce, right? So you're going to ask.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you how you're doing, and then you're going to ask me, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Jess, are you there?
I am, friend.
I have to ask you.
Can't see me.
I have to ask you because we're having technical difficulties, and it's really ironic because of all days,
I know
this is our 50th episode of the Just Podcast. 50.
I think 50. I think is it prolific? Is it?
I was about to say half a century worth of recordings, which was going to be really inaccurate because 50 years. Jess, 50 years of the Just Podcast. Can you believe it? It's almost unbelievable.
It's almost a little unbelievable.
Wow. I mean, we just we were really
amazing.
Pioneering the field.
That's right.
In
Trailblazers.
1971 when we started.
Yeah, when color TV was just a thing. I don't know if it was or not.
Who knows? But seriously, what we are not joking about is this is our 50th episode, which is a huge deal. It's kind of amazing that we've done this 50 times.
I know. So you keep up with the stats on life. First of all, hi everybody. Those who are watching us on YouTube are going to be like, "Oh,
we showed a picture."
Or maybe you'll be like, "Thank
God." For our audio listeners, we showed a picture of Jess waving because she can't get on video. So, but we're still hearing her loud and clear. But we held up her waving picture for our video folks.
Yeah, just to let you know that it's a real thing. But 50 episodes is a lot of time with you, friend.
You made that sound like it could go either way, whether that was good or bad. You just towed the line.
It's all good. It's always all good. But that's awesome. We've spent a lot of time unpacking this idea of justice and speaking to some incredible people. I feel like we need to do a toast, but I was wildly unprepared for that. And it is 11:30 in the morning. So I've got coffee.
Well, not to be outdone, I joke with you offline that I got all dressed up, for our video listeners. If you see me, but
no
for
hoodie.
Audio, I'm just wearing a hoodie, doing the regular thing. So we'll have to figure out some way to stamp this outside of the fact that I think we have one of the guests that I say this all the time, and I feel like people they're going to stop believing me, but I really do. I get really excited about this one. This is going to be a special 50th episode. Because I think our guest is really up to the task of meeting this moment. He's holding up a baseball right now. So I think we just need to, no.
Should we just dig in?
Maybe we should.
Are we going to check in? Oh, can I just do a quick check-in?
You should.
Because I don't often have kid updates or son updates anymore because he's in college. And I guess once they go to college,
we can't skip the personal check-in on our 50th episode. We've got to.
We got to
stay true to who we are.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, so can you ask me formally so I could be like, yes? Well, why? Yes, I do have a check.
Wow. Okay. Are we amateurs again? Have we forgotten how to do
this
podcast?
No, our people love it. They love it.
Jessica,
we're so weird.
How are you today?
Yes, I'm doing great, Rob. Thanks for asking.
You're welcome.
Thanks for asking. This is the moment where we do our personal check-in, and I would like to share my check-in from this weekend.
Do tell.
Yes. So our listeners by now know I have a 19-year-old who's in college in Florida, and Saturday nope, I'm making that up. Thursday, I hear a door ring and my door's ringing. I was like, okay. So I go out, I see a box and I'm like, oh, I missed the UPS guy. And so I look to my left, there's this box. I look to my right and my 6'5" son is standing outside my door. He's supposed to be in class. You know what I mean? In Florida. I was like, so my first instinct was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to see you. Big hugs and all the things. And then the mom thing kicks in. I was like, dude, aren't you supposed to be right? What is happening?
Right.
And he was like, it's the county fair, or not the county fair, the state fair. So he used his own actual real money, got on his plane, not on his own plane, but booked his own flight, came up here. I saw him for 2 hours that day. We hung out and caught up. He left. He went to ECU to hang out with friends, then went to the fair. And I saw him for 20 minutes before he headed back on Monday. So I saw my kid was in town for 5 days. I saw him for 2 hours and 20 minutes.
All right. I have 2 follow-up questions for this story.
Okay.
One,
yes.
What was the significance of the box? Was it connected? Or two, did he bring you anything back, like treat-wise from the fair?
The answer to both is no. No significance.
So the box was
to the box.
Unrelated. That was just like
I got no gifts, no treats, no fried Oreo, whatever, nothing.
Oh.
But I did get 2 hours and 20 minutes with my
I love that you
very independent.
I love that you know it to the minute how much time you spent.
It was 2 hours and 20 minutes. It was, yeah. My very sweet, very independent son. So that was really cool. Really great check-in. Tons of fun, and I'm glad to be able to share that.
A surprise visit to mom.
That's right. You know what I mean? That's good. He still loves me. And I paid his tuition today. So that's probably another reason.
Oh, maybe he was just trying to firm that up. You know, he's that's like, right. Hey, just in case, Mom, just don't forget about me.
That's right. Oh, friend, you have 4 of these moments coming along the way, but not anytime soon. How are you and your kiddos and your wife?
Hey, we're doing well.
In your life.
Life is good. Life is good. We can't complain. I'm really enjoying the weather this time of year. You know, being outside with my family has been beautiful. Just being able to sit outside, watch them play in the backyard. I'm having puppy probs. Is that a thing people say?
Oh.
I probably no.
Sure.
I don't think that.
No, they don't. But we can do it. Yeah.
That didn't sound right. This dog that we got that our listeners heard about. If you've been listening to this season, we kind of did that whole COVID puppy thing. He's not sleeping through the night, so that's not very fun. It's taking me back, Jess. I thought we were done with that, like with kids, you know, because our youngest is now 3. So all my kids are sleeping fine. Here I go getting a dog, and now I'm going backwards in the life stages where I'm now having to get up a couple times a night with this animal, which I do love. I mean, hear me. If anyone from PETA is listening, I love this dog, right? But I don't love it as much as my children, right? So like, you know, the whatever is inside of you, the love that bowls over, that like makes you get up and care for a kid, that doesn't feel the same for an animal in the middle of the night.
I'm with you.
You know,
there's a lot of people who will disagree with that, but I'm totally. Just have to love the dog a little more than sleep.
Is that bad to say? I don't love the dog more than sleep. Do you love your dog more than sleep?
Well, that's a whole nother episode.
Have you ever had to choose?
The way that I gave my dog away, I guess, is the answer to that.
Oh gosh, you're right. That's a bonus episode that comes at another time. Maybe it's its own.
That's what I said. It's another episode. I'll tell people I co-parent my dog, but I haven't seen him in like a year.
So this is going to be how we celebrate the 50th episode or the 50th year, depending on how you interpret the data. We're announcing a spinoff podcast where Rob and Jess talk about their dogs and animals in general.
It'll be a short series.
Probably won't have as much of a runway.
We're gonna lose followers. Let's move to our guests.
Crossover is not going to be as strong as last episode when we talked about the Venn diagram, the triple Venn. I don't think there's a lot there that would follow us. But maybe, who knows? Maybe we need to test the waters with a pilot. We'll see. Okay. All right. Enough of that. That was. Hey, if we're ever going to go long on a personal check-in, I think. How about every 50th episode we give ourselves a little grace to go a few minutes extra? How about that? Does that sound good to you?
Yeah. Well, and our guest is super fun, so he doesn't care. He's over here throwing a baseball.
He's currently playing baseball in his living room. He doesn't
he doesn't care.
Yeah, we might need to hurry this up so he tunes back in. But for our listeners, today is a real treat. I meant it when I said it earlier. It worked out really beautifully. I've been trying to get him on our podcast. He doesn't really believe me that I've been trying to get him on this podcast for a long time. So I think I have some maybe relational repair work that I have to do here, but it's true. I've been following this guy. I call him a brother, a friend. Have so much respect for the work that he does in our community. But Royce Hathcock, are you on the call? Can you hear us okay? Put the baseball down and press unmute. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Welcome to the
Royce.
50th episode of the Just Podcast, friend.
I don't see Jess. Is she...
The voice. I'm just the voice today.
Yeah, she's just going to kind of be hovering, just audibly today, right. not visually. But if we held up her picture, so can you lock that in your brain, Royce, and just kind of imagine her being a part of the conversation?
I got it. The voice matches the picture.
Aw, I hope that's good.
I think it is.
Could be a whole lot of things.
That's great. You got a great podcast voice, Jess. So I think that's a compliment.
Thanks, friend.
All right.
Great to see you, Royce. Glad to have you on, friend.
Honored to get to hang out with you guys for the historic 50th episode.
Hey, we're making history, and I think you're gonna help us make history today, Royce. This is I don't think I could hype this conversation up enough, and I mean that. So for our listeners, I want to set you up, and then we're going to dive into, as everybody now knows, like we want to hear your story, want to hear you tell it. But maybe I can get some of the logistics out of the way so that you can kind of give us the behind the scenes look. But for those of you who don't know, Royce Hathcock is the senior pastor at Tapestry Church of the Nazarene, and he's also the executive director for Neighbor to Neighbor Outreach in Raleigh. Royce grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. So this is actually a shout out, call back to episode 1, where our guest also hailed from Phoenix. We started out the gate with OSHA. Remember that one, Jess? His life changed in 1982 through a basketball outreach at a church where he came to know Jesus Christ. In 1984, he felt a call to reach youth and headed to college to study youth development and ministry. Royce met his wife, Julie, in college in Oklahoma while attending Southern Nazarene University, marrying after their junior year. I mean, locking it down before graduation. I love it. And upon graduating in 1988, they moved to Los Angeles to study urban ministry at the, I'm going to mispronounce this, Royce, Bresee Foundation? Bresee. Okay.
Bresee,
and go to
the founder of the Church of the Nazarene is Phineas Franklin.
There it
Bresee.
is. There it is.
1895. You got knowledge.
I got it.
Nice.
I got it. And then went on to grad school. In 1989, he was hired in the youth division at Bresee as a program director and became the director for the youth division in 1995, running a holistic youth development program for youth in downtown and South Central LA. And then in 96, he went West Coast to East Coast, came all the way here to Raleigh, NC, him, Julie, and his 2 sons to help Neighbor to Neighbor grow from a community or form a community outreach into a comprehensive youth and community development nonprofit. Royce now has 2 grandchildren, Liam and Owen, 3.5 and 15 months old. Whew. So, hey, he knows about his sons know about not sleeping, so he can relate in that way. In addition to loving young people, Royce enjoys reading, playing cards, every kind of sport imaginable. He's a Lakers fan, Dodgers fan, which is good timing for to be a Dodgers fan. The Kings, and of course the Blue Devils of Duke University, which I guess we could get into that a little bit in this conversation. But all right, that was a lot, and our listeners, there's a lot of different threads we could pull on. But I'm going to just turn the floor over to you, Royce, and say, before I do that, I'm going to say that you've been somebody that I've seen as a mentor in community development work. When although I've been spending the last 7 years based in Durham, when I think about anything happening in Raleigh and the epitome of people who live out the values of this podcast and kind of the work that I aspire to lift up in community development, your face, your name, and Neighbor to Neighbor are always at the tip of my tongue. And I mean that 100% sincerity. you're the model that, man, I've been looking to for a long time. You've been shaping my work from afar, from across Highway 40 for some time now, man. And so I'm really thrilled that our listeners get the privilege of just getting to know you, getting to know your story, and just hearing from your wisdom, because you've been about this work for some time now. So we're gonna turn the floor over to you. You can react to any of what you've heard so far. I know we kind of monologue there for a little bit, so you can speak to any of that if you'd like. But we want you really just to jump into your story and kind of tell us what our listeners haven't heard yet, and really more specifically, kind of what led you to community development work. What is the why that kind of got you into this whole thing?
Yeah. Great. Well, it's an honor to be here, and I thank God. God has a sense of humor to use the three of us together. So that shows you God not only exists, but He has a sense of humor. But I'm grateful. So thinking about my life, growing up in Phoenix, I'm from a single parent home. So me and my mom never knew my dad. Have a relationship with him now that's about 15 years old. Just different people in and out of our house and our lives, and growing up in a neighborhood that was, becoming a neighborhood of transition. So it was an older white neighborhood that had become becoming inner city and very mixed. And so that's the world I grew up in, which I'm grateful for, to grow up in a community that was African American, Latino, Native American, and white folks as well. And my mom tried to keep me out of trouble. So playing sports, baseball, basketball, football. And, those seasons gave me teammates and friends and people. And so that was really my life. And then never had any experience with church or God. So, we were probably, I don't know if we were practicing atheists, but we certainly didn't have any faith. And so literally I was a person that did not know what Easter was, what Christmas really was. And various, religious types would knock on the door of our apartment building and tell us, either we're going to hell, or invite us to a pancake breakfast, or hand me a coffee mug with a cross in it, and give me a tract, try to come in my house. But all of those people, whether they were Gideons or Seventh-day Adventists or whatever, in my world then, that was just all one group of people. And I never really had given any thought about it, which is hard to believe in America. There was a Baptist church around the corner that we played basketball on their parking lot. There were several goals, and on Sunday nights we'd get kicked off of there, and so we would play longer than we were supposed to, and then they would come out and we'd play until the next point, and then sometimes the police would come and we'd be removed, right? And so that was kind of my impression of that world. I went to an inner city high school, and it closed after my sophomore year. So this is the 80s, y'all. So like 80 to 84, think Lakers, think that world. And I went from a very diverse school to an all-white school that had power, prestige, and privilege. And so I went from warming up to more bounce in the ounce to AC/DC, right? That was the extreme of it. But that change of zip code, if you will, really is how God was instrumental in my life. And so, of course, I wanted to be on the basketball team and all that kind of stuff. And so the coach, a friend of mine, brought the coach to the park that we all played ball at. And so that summer, this man showed up, and I wanted to know him because he was the coach, right? And so this Church of the Nazarene had an air-conditioned gym, which is great in Phoenix. And they actually, paid for that air conditioning, which is great, and so you would go and play basketball, and in the middle of the night, you get some snacks, a Gatorade, some oranges or something, and then they'd slap this New Testament down in your lap with a basketball player on the front. And that was the beginning of an encounter for me that I'd never had. The scripture I read in John, it's the one where Jesus says, I'm going to leave and I'm going to send the Comforter. And I read it that he will send the Confronter. And so I read it incorrectly, but I was being confronted, right? And so I was scared to be there, and they had this basketball trip there's a Nazarene college in San Diego called Point Loma, Nazarene University, beautiful place. And to be on the team, you had to have X amount of attendances. So Sunday night, Sunday morning, Wednesday night, Sunday school, those were the options. And you really could miss about 2 and have a shot at it. And so all of a sudden, I had to do all this stuff that I'd never done in my life. And at first, I was very uncomfortable. But I began to listen, and I began to see that these people weren't weird. They had something different about them. And I began to listen to them and pay attention. And God was confronting me. And one morning, just in a regular prayer time, I just said, God, whatever's going on here, I want that in my life, and Jesus changed my life, and soon after that, my mother also came on an Easter, and she didn't have any church clothes, so she came in one of her club looking dresses and low cleavage and the whole nine. And I was ashamed. I was ashamed that my mother walked in that place of my other world, of my church people and my neighborhood mom. And God got a hold of her, and before my eyes to this day is one of the greatest miracles I've ever seen. This woman that was very just struggling in life in all kinds of ways, and she was transformed before my eyes, And so I say that to just, I thank God, I thank God. And so that, when you think about places that have shaped you, my community shaped me. And then the Church of the Nazarene shaped me, and those folks started telling me I was going to college. Right. Mm-hmm. And I never had that vision for my life. My mom was like, just graduate from high school, get a job. And so my senior year, I got a calling, if you will, and in a church service, this president of a college came, and he was going to be in the NBA, but God had already asked him to be a missionary, so he never went to the draft. And so that sermon was when God called me to ministry, and I knew that I was supposed to go reach knuckleheads like me. And I tried to tell that to my pastor and my youth pastor, and they're like, look, let's just send you out to college. You're new in the Lord and this and that. I'm like, look, I know this is what I'm supposed to do. Right. And I didn't know what all that meant. So I went off to Oklahoma and, went there initially to play basketball, ended up not doing that. Wasn't ready to be a student athlete. And God was really taking that basketball away from me and saying, I'm going to give it back to you. If you will make me first, and so, just went there to study ministry and never quite fit. I was always with the outreach kids and these churches that I went to. And there was just something else there. And so I met Julie, married her, which is amazing. I thank God. And then somebody came and spoke from the Brazil Institute, which is an urban training center in Los Angeles. And so we were trying to figure out what we're going to do when we graduate. And we decided we had an internship with grad school. And so we went out there. And my first year of marriage, second year of marriage, we moved to Los Angeles making $550 a week, $550, and that place is what was transformative for me. That was 1988 that we moved there. And, Los Angeles then, the 80s in Los Angeles is like Chicago today. It was intensified of the drug world, of the violent world, of gang shootings, of violence. And that place is where I saw that I had a white Jesus, that I had been given a Jesus that was not the real Jesus, right? And so in that place, I was introduced to Christian Community Development Association, John Perkins. To answer that question, how did I get into community development work? It was really going to Los Angeles and really studying urban anthropology and then doing urban anthropology, studying liberation theology and living in a neighborhood, in a community and figuring out what does that mean. And so that was my first exposure to read Malcolm X, James Cone, James Baldwin, Gustavo Gutierrez, the whole liberation theological piece of really helping me see larger into what does it mean to be a follower of Christ in a place that is desperate, that all around you, there was all kinds of things going on and crushing people. So that was that beginning there. That first year in Los Angeles just flipped the tables. Like when Jesus went in the temple and flipped the tables and got the whip out. And, I like that angry breaking chairs and tables Jesus. And he came in our lives and disrupted us and really showed us like, this is what the kingdom is versus what church is. And that's when my eyes were open and really, found my place in what I was supposed to be doing in the world and being a part of with God. So, that's how I would answer that question, if that makes sense.
Oh man, that's so good. I wish you could see my face. You could just imagine, maybe. Like all of the leaning in. I'm leaning in on your story. The reason I'm leaning in, Royce, is that I'm going to ask you a follow-up question, obviously, but I'm really compelled by one that you shared, this, I don't know if we call it conversion stories, but how you came to know Christ, right? And so many of us, were raised in the church. I was not. I was one of those that found Christ and got baptized. I got baptized early, but didn't know what was happening. I got baptized as an adult. And so I think there's something really interesting about that story that leads to your work. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when you don't know Christ and you've been raised in a neighborhood or in a community or in a family where that's just not a thing, right? And you've grown into it, like you're able-bodied, you're able to make decisions, and you say, this is the life I knew, more bounce than ounce, right? And then you go into here's Jesus, and you're like, okay, well, what is that? How does that work for me? How does that work for me in my community? Being in a diverse neighborhood where the diversity of thought is so different. What is Jesus got for me? And so I'm putting a little bit of words in your mouth, but I think that when you're not raised in it, when you're not taken to church every Sunday and this is your religion, that's a different experience where you have to adapt and decide for yourself if that's what you believe at some point. But you were given an opportunity and it evolved into this choice that you made as an adult to say, I want to follow Christ and I'm going to listen to the direction and the guidance in my life to sort of take this journey, this spiritual journey and this faith journey with him. I think that's pretty cool. And so my next question was really about, so last week we talked about these ideas of the parish model where you really dig deep into community. You don't go broad, you go deep, and you invest in the people, the community, and the lives that are around you, sort of like drawing a circle around the map. And with Neighbor to Neighbor, you have been doing this thing for 25 years. And that's astounding to me. And it's a long time. I know we joked about it earlier in pre-show, but it's a long time because it's not the way things happen these days. People are real fast food. We move on. I'm one of those people. I do things for 3 years. I'm off to the next. I stay curious. I all these different things. And what it sounds like is that you've doubled down on this work over and over and over again. And it's truly it's not unique, but it's so unique in this day and age to see somebody invest that deeply and for that long. And so there's a lot to be learned there. I'm curious if you were to go back to 1996, which would be 25 years. I did that quick math. It was 1996. I was a sophomore in college. So that was Biggie, Tupac.
Oh, there was
right?
Gangster's Paradise.
That's right.
96.
Tupac died in 96. Yeah.
There was a lot happening. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot happening in 96. And that's when you kicked this off, Neighbor to Neighbor. So I'm curious what advice you would give yourself if you were to go back to 1996 and you knew everything you know now. What would you say to yourself? What's that advice?
Yeah, I appreciate what you're talking about. And when you think about, a parish type of model, and really that the piece of sticking and staying, of really standing in a place and say, what does it mean to follow Christ on the corner of Blunt and Bragg, where we are today, in the middle of a historic African-American neighborhood, a brag street that, has been the place that you could buy narcotics, and there's misguided entrepreneurs there every day where women are addicted and sell their bodies, where, Black bodies are dehumanized and not cared for in so many different ways, right? And to say, I'm going to follow Christ on that corner, that question has to be the dominant piece of the parish model, to stick and stay, to listen. And when I think about looking back, those are the things that you really want to say to people, that in a world where pumpkin spice Jesus ministry, where we're so professional, do we even need the Holy Spirit, right? Yes, we do. But do we listen anymore? Do we do life with people? Do we neighbor, right? And that's a big piece of it. So, I would hope that I would be able to, to 25 years sounds like a long time, but the way I really look at it, the door is just starting to crack, it's just getting interesting. People begin to say like, well, maybe you will stick around. Maybe you're not somebody with a white attitude. Maybe you're not going to do a Christian drive-by and shoot me up with the gospel, but instead you're going to be a neighbor, and make neighbor, improve yourself neighbor. So when I think about, the time, that advice, I would hope that I would stick and stay in that, and encourage others to do that. The church needs to be engaged in community development world, like living in Los Angeles taught me that. I was ordained in 1992 in June, and in April, the civil unrest happened with Rodney King. And that event forever changed me as well, because there's this connection to, not only what does it mean to follow Christ, but there's these things that generationally continue to happen that we ignore, and so they do another study after the civil unrest. I lived inside of that civil unrest, my neighborhood was burning, right? My neighborhood was being looted. Young people were being put on the ground, police, all these different things. And so you live in that, and you realize that, I was born in 1966. The Watts riots were in the early 60s. King was killed in 68. And then in 92, we have Rodney King, and then we have George Floyd. And so we see in the Kerner Commission report that Johnson did after the Watts riots, and all these civil unrest that happened all over the country. That report lays out clearly that the United States and its policies and decisions has created environments that stoke these fires. And we have had opportunity to change that, and we haven't, and it'll happen again. And so for me, that piece of advice today, I tell young people, young leaders, be bold, like young people want you to be bold. And I tell anybody that says they have any kind of faith at all that we must keep the moral window of racial equity open. We can't let that window close. We have to all see through that lens. Otherwise, in 20 years, it'll pile up again, and it'll happen again, And so there is this opportunity. Heck, even NASCAR said we need to check ourselves with these Confederate flags, right? And that's one of my things I want to say in church is, come on, church, shame on us if NASCAR can step up before we can, right? So those are some things that I think about, is that, in church, we want to play nice, but the reality is God wants us to deal with these isms and schisms, and to be a neighbor. We know evangelism, but we've forgotten what neighboring is. And neighboring has to do with being connected to bodies that are discarded, bodies that have trauma, bodies and people that have, like the wounded man in the Good Samaritan Passage in Luke 10, it says a wounded man. The real language means someone that was on the edge of death. What we realize in that passage is that if we're not connected to discarded bodies that suffer injustice and violence, we actually can't be neighbor. We can't prove ourselves neighbor or be neighbor. Now, that's disturbing. People don't want to hear that. But the reality, there's a reason why justice and righteousness are the same word in Scripture. You know, you don't get to be righteous without being just, and you don't get to be just without being righteous. You know, it is a bloody thing to do, and it's what is necessary. So I try to drive that forward in my life. I want to be that person, and I feel like that's what God's church is supposed to do. But we have to prove ourselves neighbor. We have to put ourselves on the path of discarded bodies. And if we don't do that, we can't get bloody and we can't neighbor. And so those are things that I try to push forward. Because when you get old, you just tell stories, Jess. That's how it works.
I like storytelling. Storytelling is real, and it brings it to life for us. So I appreciate that. And I really appreciate neighboring versus evangelism. It stuck out to me in a big way. I think that this idea of pumpkin spice, what'd you say?
Pumpkin spice Jesus. Yeah, that's...
Jeez. Pumpkin spice Jesus and neighboring versus evangelism.
Hey, keep the stories coming is what I'm saying. Because, hey...
I mean, that's it. That's it for me. It's so good, and it is quite unique. So, Royce, thank you for giving us your sort of edict on that. I think that was really special. Thank you for that.
Royce, I want to go a little deeper on that term sticking and staying, right? This advice that you would put to yourself 25 years ago. I mean, you've seen a lot of stuff, 25 years in a single community. You mentioned the corner of Blunt and Bragg. I mean, you know the circle on the map. You got the four corners of your block marked, and you've tread them, and those trails are treaded with your footsteps and the footsteps of folks at Neighbor to Neighbor. I also know that, man, that's when you think about what the community has just been evolving constantly in that time frame. It's hard to think back to what even the neighborhood looked like then, but you've also just been having to evolve your ministry to adapt to a changing community, right? Whether it be gentrification, which feel like that's been a long arc now. We're starting to see these buildings pop up, but I mean, you've been seeing that for a while. You know, unemployment. You know, talking about recidivism. Like, I'd like. What are those issues that kind of feel like have been risen to the surface that you guys have had to really meet head on over the course of that 25 years that stand out to you? And I want to flip the coin and this be kind of a two-part question, because I think people are more familiar. You know, when you and I sat down ahead of me and my family thinking about before we moved to Southeast Raleigh, right, and kind of got proximate to Neighbor, to seek your advice. Like, what does that look like for me to do this well? Because I knew you were already in this space. The narrative out there was already, hey, what's wrong with this neighborhood? And people can name that, especially if they're outside of it. Okay, let's talk about what's missing. Let's look at this through a negative lens. But you mentioned CCDA and John Perkins. I mean, they've been pioneering this work of asset-based community development. So I guess the second part of the question is, what are these hurdles that you've had to face when it comes to, you said it, we got to put ourselves in the path of discarded bodies. For people who don't know, what are the ways in which people are being discarded on the corner of Blunt and Bragg that you've met head on by cultivating the assets of the community to fan those sparks into flame? I'd love to hear kind of how you speak to that.
Yeah, well, again, you know, how you see is what you see, right? And CCDA would really ask us to not start with the negative, but really see it in a community, because it's a beautiful community. It's a strong community. You know, African-American people are tremendously strong. They persevere. Any people that is really deserve to take every weapon there is and do away with people that look like us, but they haven't, right? They are the remnant, in my view. You know, so I'm honored to that people make space and let me be in that space and gain every day. With that said, because of the dynamics of America and, our institutional racism and injustice and our policies that have, taken land from people and pushed people into places, we've created conditions for extreme challenge, and we've discarded people. We've created places of that are a frying pan for trauma, and so, crime isn't a crime issue, it's a health issue. And if you live in a place that is challenged in many different ways, you're going to be a product of that environment, right? And I mean, data says we're all products of our zip codes. Zip codes provide mentors and opportunity and vision and resource. And so there is places in our country, rural and urban, that lack opportunity. And so that creates this kind of shaping. So in our neighborhood, an old historical African-American community, Southeast Raleigh, our particular neighborhood is called South Park. Before integration, it was, a middle-class neighborhood of African-Americans, professors, professional people. There was over 100 businesses downtown that were a part of that. Over time, dynamics happen, right? And so land is taken, people are pushed. So today, of course, everybody knows about gentrification. I mean, our building was in the New York Times article about 8 years ago now, that was showing the fastest gentrifying neighborhood in the United States was our neighborhood, right? And you'd see a shotgun house next to a $500,000 home, and that dynamic is still going on. Our neighborhood is also a reentry community. So we have people that are returning from prison, because it is a neighborhood that has lots of, rooming houses, rent rooms, that type of thing. It's also an entry point for people from, other countries. So we have that dynamic going on too. The Latino folks that enter into that area, that is a kind of an entry point neighborhood. It's a young community as well. So there's children and moms and families. And then there's all these new people coming in as well. So gentrification is a real deal. Again, reentry, homelessness, mental illness, like these are things, again, bodies that are discarded in different ways. The budget tells us what we care about, what we don't. So inside of that, in our parish model, what does it mean to be the church there, to say, Christ? Over the years, as we've engaged with people, you get to know people's journey, their life, and you begin to start with the basics. Some people just need an ID, and other people might come to Jobs for Life. And over time of listening to people in Jobs for Life classes, people begin to be interested in entrepreneurship or enterprise. And so over time, what sounds like a long time, 25 years, but in communities that have been discarded and forgotten, as I said, the door has just been cracked. It really has. And it shows you the wide range effect of policy and institutional injustice and racism, and how it can permanently leave something affected, right? So today, an example, we have this thing called neighbor enterprises, and that came up out of the community. Our model is listening to people in the community. And so we believe the answers are already in the community, but the resources that maybe are more financial, or, people will come with gifts, talents, and abilities. They just need opportunity. They need bridges. And so we've really tried to live in that CCDA vein of coming alongside people and listening. And so everything we do today comes out of those listening relationships, as well as, the adaptations, or what I would say, what is bubbling up next, so this has to happen for this to happen, and this to happen. And God works that way of giving us something right in front of us to be obedient with now. So the last few years, we Inside of our model, we have programs that are for profit and for those companies, and really they just support that work. So they don't support the nonprofit, but it is a program in the nonprofit. And there's a catering company, there's a moving company. We just opened a cleaning business, and we're getting ready to launch the landscape business. We've also sold vegetables out of our garden. We sold solar lights with youth. So we are, engaged in this idea of entrepreneurial thinking inside of a capitalistic society. How can we do Jubilee in that, right? How can we make sure we're not capitalists? And how can we do Jubilee? How can we create living wage work? How can we create leadership and opportunity for people where none may have existed before? So that is kind of an example of some of the ways. The other ways are finding ways to partner with people. And that sounds great, but collaboration is challenging. People have philosophies about how they do things. So you got all these people that work with youth, but on paper, they all have philosophies of how they do that. So there's client organizations, which there's nothing wrong with that. And then there's relational organizations, which there's nothing wrong with that. And we fall into that vein. There's collaborations that work, and then the money is gone and they bust apart. And there's collaborations that are able to stay together and keep doing the work. So these types of things need to happen. The other piece is really accountability of the powerful, and so that's something we're going to talk about some more. But there's this larger systemic thing that we have to work on, and then there's the everyday thing with people as well, that we have to care about our neighbors enough in our community to hold the powerful accountable by organized people and organized money to get policies done that affect everybody, and not just people that create more tax base, but everybody. So those reentering our society from prison, those entering into our country, your everyday teacher and fireman that would like to buy a house in Wake County, but they can't afford it. So these are different things that you try to engage in and approach, right? And find partners that have that same heart for neighboring, as I would say.
Royce, you just gave me an alley-oop. Thanks, friend. Appreciate that. Because I want to talk about One Wake. That was perfect. This idea of, you spearheaded this, and maybe you can give us sort of the impetus, the background a little bit. But talk to our listeners about what One Wake is, because you just set up the last couple of minutes of that answer around partnerships, that it's difficult to create collaborations, and it just isn't easy because everybody comes to the table with their own mission, vision, values, right? How do you find that through line? And so One Wake is committed to this idea of bringing together religious organizations, faith-based groups, nonprofits, associations around goals. That's my theory, thought, and understanding it. I'm over here in Durham County, but I used to live over there where y'all are. So tell us a little bit more about One Wake and what led you to driving that initiative.
Yeah, driving and spearheading is a little strong.
Okay.
I was invited to the table, and years ago we had started another affiliate of One Wake is from the Industrial Areas Foundation. So they are the oldest community organizers in the United States. You can look them up, and Sal Linsky is kind of the founder in the 40s. They've been organizing in the United States and around the world. There's about 70 affiliates in the United States.
Okay.
There is, so about 20 plus years ago, they started Raleigh and Durham at the same time. And the Raleigh one only lasted about 4 years. And so then it closed. And then about 4 years ago, they came about we need to get this thing going. And so the organization launched about a year ago, after really building relationships with people for about 3 years. And so in Durham, the affiliate is Durham CAN, which is Congregations, Associations, and Neighborhoods. In Chapel Hill, it's Justice United. And then the one in Raleigh is called One Wake. And so this is right now a collaboration of about 50 faith-based organizations, associations, neighborhoods. And so it's the rainbow of faith and people. So there's Muslims, there's Catholics, there's Protestants, there's people from associations and neighborhoods, there's Jewish folks. So you have the major religions, and anybody's welcome to that table. And it's really this idea of really politics without a party, if you will. It's really no permanent enemies, no permanent friends. And it's based around the concept of really organized people and organized money creates power. And so that power is not in anybody's pocket. So every candidate is invited to the table. We'll work with anybody that wants to work with the agenda that has come up out of the people. And so the agenda is created by conversations in communities and all the communities all these folks are from, as well as where they might attend and worship in neighborhoods, different areas of the city. And so we gather that information, that data, and then we have an internal assembly where we vote on issues we think we can win right now. And then we develop committees to work on those. We train everyday people to learn how to be community organizers, how to work on this stuff. So we find out who's doing what in affordable housing. And then we do our own research. We come up with a proposal. And then we then get to the tables of the people that are in charge of those things. So the county commissioners, city council, mayors, municipalities, developers. And we get to those tables and we bring out proposals for them to react to. And then we begin to look for compromises, ways we can work together to get a better deal than is currently on the table. So right now we're working on affordable housing, living wage work, and education. And so we have research committees on that. We have proposals. And we are really working on organizing all of Wake County. So these organizations are from all over Wake County. And then we also unite with our brothers and sisters in Chapel Hill and Durham as well. And really looking at organizing Wake County itself. So how can we work on these different issues is what we're working on. So we have a couple of initiatives right now. We're working in Cary, working on a penny increase there to create money for affordable housing. Something similar was done in Chapel Hill a few years ago, created like $4 million for affordable housing. We're working on some stuff in Raleigh, and we're also working on some things in kind of the Wake Forest, Wake Forest area. There's a trailer park there that has been bought by a developer. Those people are all going to be displaced. So we're working on that. So those are some examples of how we can get involved. And it makes politics more real because me as an individual pastor or citizen, I can go down and they could treat me like I'm the best person in the world. Oh, that's that neighbor guy. And hey, vote for me. We're going to do affordable housing, blah, blah, blah. Right. But the reality is now there's all these people that are behind us, and so we support each other. And we also represent 20,000 voters. Right. And so if people don't want to, come on board and work with us, then it kind of sends a message to everybody that, these are our partners right now and these people aren't. And we might need to find some new partners. Yeah. So that's kind of how it is, politics without a party. We set up meetings, with city council individuals. We get to know them. We do relational meetings and we find out their passions, their hearts. And then we really begin to find out, okay, tell us about where you're at with affordable housing, and let us tell you where we're at now. Would you support this proposal that this has come up out of 20,000 people? Would you be interested in coming behind that? And if so, here's our recommendation. So that's kind of how it plays out. It's beautiful. It's respectful, but it's also, it's powerful, and power only recognizes power, right? If you have power, you just don't wake up and say, I'm going to share it. You have to they have to make a decision and look at One Wake or Durham Can or Justice United and say, they have enough power that I have to recognize them. I have to let them, I have to talk to them. I have to bring to the table with them. I have to deal with these folks. But the reality is, if they didn't have to do that, they would find a way to put us off, right? So that's the way it works, kind of the old school citizen politics, community organizing. And it's important. It's super important work. Right now, there's nothing affordable, right? So it's even for what they would call, just working people, right? Like if you're a teacher and you want to buy a house in Raleigh, good luck, So anyway, I get excited about that because, you get older, you get a little grumpier, right? And you want justice to be done a little quicker. And so it's a way to, be before people that can make those decisions, and you can put some pressure on them to make those decisions and hold them accountable. Power needs to be held accountable, and just like we all do. So, Jess, you need accountability, right?
Every day.
Hey,
every single day.
We all need
Probably why my son flew home. He was like, I think my mom's out of control. Let's just check in on that.
Royce, I'm really thankful. I mean, just hearing for our listeners, I've known a lot of this following your journey for some time, but it's so invigorating. I don't know, just to hear the trajectory and evolution of your ministry and its focus. It's almost like this visual of you, you're starting out, and you still are running a nonprofit that is known most for mentoring young people in a neighborhood. That's what it says right there on your website in bold font, right? It's about mentoring relationships that result in communities of hope, justice, and compassion. But honestly, that talk is cheap. A lot of people use that kind of words, but and maybe just stay at the relational, which is at the surface. I just kind of get this vision when I'm hearing you talk of it's like you got this shovel in your hands, and you started with relationships, and you just been digging, man. And you've been digging for 25 years, and that has led you from, you haven't abandoned, you're still doing those mentoring relationships, but it's led you, as you've worked with what you say, you discard people who are being discarded, it's led you to be a social enterprise incubator where you're spinning off now for-profit businesses to create jobs for the people in your community. And if that wasn't enough, now you're digging even deeper to get to the institutional barriers that are preventing and blocking opportunity, that are keeping people from flourishing in your community. And so, man, it's like you mentioned the Good Samaritan earlier. I get this sense, man, that you are, and Neighbor to Neighbor is, right? Because I know it's not just you. You and your team are embodying not only the Good Samaritan story of you're stopping for the discarded folks on the road, and you're writing the check to get them bandaged, and you're taking the time to walk alongside them for as long as it takes. But you're going so much further than that, because you've noticed, man, why are all the bodies piling up on this road? I'm going to go and I'm going to organize some folks to talk about getting this road fixed. We're going to fix the roads, which I think is a quote from another pastor, Charlie Dates, you mentioned Chicago, right? I don't know if there's beef between Chicago and LA, but hey, I think we got to give him a shout out, because that's a powerful YouTube video if you haven't looked it up, that I ran across this past year when everything's going down.
Nice.
But all right, that was a long preamble, more so just a comment. I'm going to get to my question here. So you mentioned One Wake kind of being one of the things that make it distinct, being this rainbow coalition across faith groups, which is such a beautiful picture of rolling up your sleeves and finding common ground and not letting, what things that really have been distinctions keep us from partnering together with people who could be really strategic. You haven't let that get in the way. You say, hey, we can find common ground across faith, lines of faith difference. That's been kind of our whole theme for this season 3, is this idea of fusion friendships, these relationships that are formed around common passions, across difference. Has there been a particular fusion friendship? If you had to name one, I know you probably can name 1,000. But over the 25-year arc, or even in the past year, if you had to pick one that has been especially meaningful for you, as you reflect back on your ministry, which one would it be?
Yeah, that is that's a tough question. I think in being in a space like One Wake, it gives you a place to gather that people are intentionally community development people, so they're motivated by faith and justice and people, and then you build relationships. You go on a journey together, and you get a window as people make space. You get a window into what is it like to be a Muslim in America? What is it like to be a Jewish person? What is it like to be in this different faith or space, and how does that feel in a white cultured America that is built around Christianity, right? So the men and women and there's a steering committee that I've been honored to be a part of, I listen to these folks, but Jamon Taylor is one of the African American pastors that's near me. Over the years, Apostle Philip Walker is probably the first African American pastor I met in Raleigh that I've done lots of things with. The initial IAF that we had in Raleigh, he was a part of that steering committee group, and we've done different projects together over time. There's just a lot of different people, and so there's a Catholic priest in Cary, and so he is a Monsignor, so he's the older, and we hang out, and I call him my priest and he calls me his pastor, right? And he's older than me, and I get to sit around and listen to him, and it's beautiful. So, women in leadership, I think about that, and Lisa Yoboa, a lot of people know Lisa, a good friend of mine, and love her so much and what she's got going on, and super excited she's a part of this journey of One Wake, and letting her voice be used of God in that space. So those are some folks. I always have to mention too, when I came to Raleigh and didn't know a soul, he's no longer living, but Ray Siegler, who ran Young Life then, if it wasn't for that man of deciding, like, what you're doing, what God has called you to do, and he made a decision. He's like, look, it's going to take some time, but we're going to make this thing happen, but and that, Ray in Virginia, Ray died a few years ago, but I just thank him because he was the connector for me in lots of different places. So there's so many. So that's a little bit of that makes me deeper. And for all of us, we need to walk in other people's journeys and histories, read books by people that don't look like you, learn about other things, that is critical for us to have the right eyes in the world.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that. Lisa Yaboa, Rob, we need to write her down. We need to get her on this podcast. That's an incredible fusion friendship, I can imagine.
Yeah, hit all those One Wake people up, man. Get them in here. You need to get Iman and get the rabbi, get all those folks. Okay. They're all awesome.
Yeah,
love it.
It's
love
awesome.
It. Can't wait.
Well, so we usually land this plane with this idea of just one thing, right? Since our podcast is named Just, a little play on words, but like just one thing, right? What's the one thing our listeners can practically do? And you just gave some tips, like read some things by people that don't look like you. Like that's a practical thing to do. But there are probably some other steps or ways that our listeners can get involved with you and your enterprises, the organization today. So I'm going to let you take the floor on this. I suspect I know what's coming, but there's a lot of ways, very practical ways, things that we're already doing. Whether I was just thinking I need to send a note to my cleaning company. You have so there's ways in which we can shift our dollars and make sure that we're supporting the work within community. So I'm going to turn the floor over to you. What's that just one thing?
Well, I appreciate you letting us do a commercial or something, but I would say a more important, just one thing is, really the idea of the Samaritan Passage, and how did the Samaritan embody being a neighbor? And he really did two things. He approached the wounded man, and I'm trying to get people to see that passage as bodies. Black bodies in America are traumatized, and when you think about the passage in that way, the passage pulls us deeper in that we have to be connected to discarded, wounded, traumatized bodies. And so that makes us then, the next step that Samaritan did is he approached the man. and so until we can really embrace that idea, the quality of our approach, and when we do that, neighboring only happens when we put ourselves in the path of the broken on purpose. When we do that, we both create neighbor and we also prove neighbor. And that is the heart of what I would want to leave anybody that has faith is that we spend all our time, thinking about or defining neighbor, just like the expert in the law did. But the reality is we need to be a neighbor. And the depth of that passage, to me, in my mind, it is saying that if we are not connected as Christ-following people to discarded, traumatized, wounded, and forgotten bodies, we cannot be neighbor. and so, what am I doing now, and what am I going to do? And that passage makes us approach and roll our sleeves up and provide that kind of hope and get busy doing it. So that's not one thing, but it is one thing. It's critical, and it is the thing, and it will change the world. It's the most creative force in the universe. It's agape love. And, King said agape love doesn't look for value. It creates value. You think about that as a believer, like we are supposed to not go out there and look for value, but we are supposed to look at people just like those people did with me when I was 16 on my basketball court, and I didn't treat them well, but they created value in me, right? And that's what agape does. It loves and imparts value and by loving, right? So that's what I would say today. As an old dude that's 55, the quality of our approach.
Love that. Thank you.
Thank God, right? This is over. Right? You guys are like, please.
I thought
so much good food for thought. I am taking a deep breath, though. It's like a lot to take in. It's all so important. It all matters.
I'm taking notes.
Good luck to your editor.
Hey.
At
first when he said, thank God it's over, I thought he was talking for himself. Like, I thought he was like, I can't wait to get out of here.
Been. Don't put that to the side too quick.
But he was talking. He's
double
talking.
entendre.
Oh, yeah.
Is that the right word? I don't know.
I think let's do it. We can do no wrong in our 50th episode, right? If you're going to drop it, and man, thank you, Royce. I feel like you gave us so much, and you have no idea of knowing how much this builds on so many of the conversations that we've been having for so long.
I hope so.
Especially this season, but even before that, 2 and 1, Jess. I mean, there's so many different connecting points that we've laid a foundation for that Royce has just, I think, really just pulled it all together in a really beautiful way. So, Royce, man, we're grateful for you. Grateful for everything that you are and what you're doing. And we got to get lunch soon. So I'm coming your way. I'm gonna shoot you a text, and we're gonna get up. We're gonna go hit Jack's Seafood and Soul Food. Or we can make, is it too much? Can neighbor cater a lunch for 2 people? Is that's too big of a meal, right?
Sure.
Let's make it happen. I'm okay with leftovers.
Yeah, we can go to Jack's. I was at St. Aug yesterday. I was thinking about you.
Man, we got to get back over there. Oh, good. That would be good for my soul. Well, hey, we're going to let you go, man. Get back to doing your thing. But we're grateful for you, and we're grateful for this conversation.
Yeah, thank God. Thank you, y'all. I hope to meet you in person, Jess, one day.
Me too. I didn't get the invite for lunch, so maybe I'll come at the end and get some banana pudding for dessert and just scoop in at the last minute.
Let's do it. Come on. Let's make this happen. I'm sorry. I'm leaving you. No, but Rob is like,
Jess never comes to Raleigh. That's all he was thinking.
That is probably what I was thinking.
That's not true. I'm over in Raleigh about 3 times a week these days. So yeah, I'll pop over. I'll join y'all for the back half of that lunch. It sounds great.
All right.
Bye, y'all.
Well, thanks, guys.
Thank you, Royce.
Blessings, friend. Thank you. Bye, Jess.
Bye-bye.